All right, so this recording will be shared with everyone after the meeting as well. It will go out in the short-term rental community update that we send out via email. So if you're not subscribed to that email list, now would be a great time to go ahead and go subscribe to that as well. So a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. Each listening session, we like to start with a little introduction and overview of who's in the room. So we'll start with that. And then we'll talk about some of the things that we've implemented since the last listening session, just so folks can be aware of saying, okay, these ideas came out of the listening session and this is what's changed since then. And then you'll get a little bit of a sneak peek today into our hotline and complaint resolution process and some of the things that are going to be coming up with that. So a little bit of guidelines for when we do get to that listening session period at the end. This meeting is going to be a little bit more informal of a setting than a town council meeting, but we do have a lot of folks who are in the room. So we'll still facilitate it by raising our hands, and we'll have a timer just to make sure that everyone who wants to speak today has the opportunity to share their thoughts and comments with us. So we'll just ask that one person speaks at a time. We'd ask that you keep your comments concise and on the topic of short-term rentals specifically. Tonight's session is a listening session primarily, and the goal is to provide information to folks and provide this quick update as well as gather input from people. It's not primarily a question and answer session, but we are definitely happy to provide some answers to things. And you are welcome to join us at the table so that when we get to the session, everyone can see you as well. We just had another person join us in person. All right, and so clarifying questions I would say are okay, just so we can make sure everyone's on the same page, but let's keep those brief and concise as well. And we would also especially welcome feedback about the process related to our sneak peek about the hotline. But you are welcome to comment on anything. So as we get started today, we're going to start off with some introductions. My name is Maddie Cielu. I'm the town clerk of Keystone. I am moving into a new role and we are hiring a new town clerk. So you might see a new face handling some of the administration of the licensing and regulation program. So when that change happens, there will be an announcement about how that impacts things and what exactly that looks like. If you haven't interacted with me specifically, you might have interacted with Gabby to help with your licensing, or Heike in the finance department to manage things with lodging taxes and compliance there. All right. So another thing we like to do to start these listening sessions off is to just get a little bit of an idea of who's in the room today. We're going to do that for both the people who are virtual and the people who are in person. This is a very large meeting, and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So rather than having everyone go around and introduce themselves, I'm going to identify some groups that you might be in. And if you would just raise your hand so we can get an idea of maybe how many people in each group are here. And I recognize that you might be in more than one group. So if you are both a property owner of a short-term rental and a full-time resident, you could raise your hand for both of those things. That would be totally fine. But just raise your hand virtually. There's a little hand raise button on the top of your screen here. So how many folks in the room, either in person here or virtually, are STR property owners? We've got one hand up in the room. Looks like right now we've got 16, 17, 18, 20 folks online. All right, and then you can put your hand down. And then how many folks in this room are short-term rental hosts or property management company representatives? All right, looks like we've got about 8 hands up, 9 hands up online. And then how many, you folks can put your hands down. And then how many folks are HOA representatives? We've got one person in the room. Looks like about 11 people online. Perfect. You folks can put your hands down as well. Members of the local workforce in any way. We've got some half hands raised in the room. And we've got 6 folks online. All right, and then do we have any you folks can put your hands down. And then do we have any representatives of local businesses? We've got about 6 folks raising their hands. And then finally, anyone who just identifies as a visitor or a guest to Keystone. All right, we've got 4 hands raised. So not a super scientific way to identify everyone, but just letting us all be familiar with who's participating in these conversations and getting an idea of who's in the room here today. And like I said, a lot of people are probably in multiple groups as well. So just a general idea there. Get just a few more people. Perfect. All right, so just a very brief overview of our short-term rental program timeline. This is a very high-level overview of this. The town of Keystone began operations on February 8th of 2024. Between that period and September 30th of 2024 was when we needed to stand up the licensing and enforcement regulations for short-term rentals for the first year. Following that time period, initially, leading up to that, actually, we implemented Summit County short-term rental regulations with just a few changes in the first year. And as part of that implementation, the town council promised that we would have listening sessions or some sort of community engagement following that first year to understand what the community felt about how short-term rentals were going and make some changes based off of that. So those initial listening sessions were held in the spring of 2025. We had 4 of those listening sessions that spring. And then we adopted updated regulations in August of 2025. And it looks like maybe Deb's got a question. Maybe her hand is still up from earlier as well. That could be possible. All right. And then we adopted updated regulations in August of 2025 to lead up to the licensing cycle on September 30th of 2025 this year. So some of the ideas that came out of these listening sessions in 2025 that were actually implemented, just so folks can have an idea of, hey, this is what we talked about at these listening sessions, and here's how town council responded to that. So the first thing was the implementation of required short-term rental parking passes. This was something that the town council reviewed in their updated ordinance regulations. So those short-term rental parking passes are required for all short-term rental units, and you're meant to give out the same number of parking passes as designated in your license. And you give those out to the renters, and they need to have the unit number and address on them. The second thing was the implementation of required parking diagrams, specifically for single-family homes and townhomes. Condominiums were exempted from this cycle, but that was something that was talked about an idea that might help with the regulation of parking during the listening sessions last year. The third thing was the implementation of a requirement for direct number provided by the responsible agent. So folks who aren't familiar with this process, each short-term rental license has a responsible agent that they need to provide contact information to the town. That contact information is associated with the license. And if we get any reports related to an individual property, we then reach out to that responsible agent. One thing that had been identified in the listening sessions last year as a difficulty is that a lot of these responsible agents and property management companies had kind of complex phone trees that were difficult to navigate. So the requirement became that they needed to have a direct number that dialed into them. The fourth thing that came out of this was the implementation of ongoing quarterly listening sessions. And then finally, the implementation of ongoing short-term rental newsletters. And that's the newsletter list that you likely found out about today's session from. So a little bit of a sneak peek of what we are working on, and one of the issues that we have identified as town staff as an issue that has been recurring and something that we'd like to make updates to is addressing the STR hotline and complaint system and how we handle those issues. So I do just want to take a moment to share the rest of my screen with you folks. So I will admit these folks again in from the lobby. So actually might be more helpful to just stay here. So in 2024, when we talked about the short-term rental program timeline, the town had about 6 months to stand up a licensing and enforcement system. And during that time period, we reached out to all of the primary short-term rental providers who provide different software services and enforcement services for municipal governments related to addressing short-term rental licensing and also short-term rental compliance. So as a part of that process, we received invitation or proposals from several different companies, and every one of the companies who are the primary providers of this in the marketplace. And we decided to go with a software called Deckard Technologies. They were able to meet the timeline that we had, and they were also really well reviewed by the other municipalities that we spoke to that were using them. And the primary client that we spoke to was in Galveston. But what we found over the first couple years of using this system is the system did not work quite like we anticipated. So this is something that we're working on resolving. As part of this listening session, several things are going to go out afterwards, including this presentation, as well as the complaint log of all the complaints that we've gotten during this rental season, and the resolution of those complaints. So going through the resolution of these complaints, what you'll see afterwards when you have this information and are able to look through it a little bit more closely is there are several complications with the way that the hotline is operating and kind of the issues of how the hotline operators are functioning. We're going to share some tips for folks to be able to know, here's the best way to deal with the complaint system as we have it right now, as well as a preview of what we're working on to get things updated. So with the complaint monitoring, some important things to remember and some things that keep kind of coming up over time as we're looking through patterns of reporting is if you're encountering an issue, it's very important to report that incident while it is happening. Do not report that incident after the event has taken place, because one of the critical pieces of the short-term rental regulations is the requirement for a responsible agent to respond within 1 hour of the complaint. If the issue has already taken place and is and is not continuing to happen, it's very difficult for us to go out and verify that in any way or have the responsible agent verify that either. So please make sure that you're reporting the incident while it is happening. We would also ask that you're prepared to provide the full legal address of the unit. We have made some updates to the database because there are some weird addresses in Keystone, like the Gateway building, for example, where the address on the door does not match what the legal address is. In those buildings, we have updated it so that both are available to the hotline, but it's a little bit more precise right now with the current system to be able to provide that legal address still. The third thing I would recommend is being sure that that incident is able to be clearly traced back to a specific unit. And if it is clearly traced back to that specific unit, to provide that information as well. And then noise violations are also subject to the town of Keystone's noise ordinance. So if you are experiencing noise issues and the issue is not being addressed by the STR hotline, you can also call non-emergency dispatch.
Workbook? Can I do this?
Just gonna mute folks one more time. All right, so I would encourage you to call non-emergency dispatch, but also still call the hotline so that we are able to track it in the hotline and then take a look at that incident afterwards and identify whether or not that was an issue that got tracked in non-emergency dispatch as well. And for folks who may be wondering, that number is the same throughout Summit County because it gets tracked through the 911 communication center. So don't call 911 for a non-emergent noise issue, but it is that same non-emergency dispatch number across Summit County. So now we're just going to take a very quick overview of what we're working on with the complaint hotline. In addition to meeting with Deckard Technologies, our existing provider, right now I'm meeting with them on a bi-weekly basis and going over each of the complaints that we receive and identifying what the issues are and why that is or is not being addressed through the current hotline provider. But we are also aware that they are not making progress at the speed that is appropriate for the services that they should be providing. So we are looking at making a new hotline option available that is going to be a little bit more robust and have all of the pieces of the complaint process captured inside of it so that it works better for everyone. So
can I?
Yes.
Is it going to be custom for Keystone?
Yes.
How much does this cost to begin with?
Yeah, so the cost of that is actually not tremendous. We are paying about $3,000 a month right now in the development costs. And once we finish with the development of that, it will not be an ongoing cost for the software. And that's a great question. So this new software that we're looking at is the same software provider that we're using for the licensing. And our licensing software provider is Blue Vector AI. And the benefit of them is they're a smaller local company with Keystone ties. They're specifically interested in making sure that things are getting addressed. They understand our community, and they're very responsive to specific issues and updates that we need to be making to things. And they're very cost efficient. So that is also very nice. Because usually if you were to go with some of those other providers, it's $100,000 or more out of the box for some of those complaint softwares. But making additional changes and updates to that is very spendy. That was a great question. So this is just a very brief overview of kind of some of the screenshots of what we've got in development right now. It's utilizing an AI chatbot system, so it's going to be a little bit different, but that's why we've been taking the time to really test things as a staff, make sure that the restrictions on the chatbot are very limited, that they're only pulling from the data and the test information that we've provided as town employees. And we're being very strict with the testing on that. So that's part of the piece that's taking a while with the development internally. So individuals will be able to submit their complaint. One of the benefits of submitting it with this AI chatbot is it's able to identify some of those keywords and say, oh, it looks like you're talking about something that is related to an HOA concern, or it looks like you're talking about something that is really an emergency and you should probably call 911. And the system is able to prompt them, hey, I think you might be going about this the wrong way. Here's how you should contact this. Because one of the things that came up in the listening sessions last year is there's a lot of confusion about who to contact when and for what issues. And people are just like, do I call my HOA about this? Do I call the police? Do I call the short-term rental hotline? Where do I go? So it's able to do some of that sorting. Yes, Tim.
In either the current system or the new system, is the complainant's name public knowledge? So if somebody's looking at the complaints, they know who filed a complaint against them?
So in terms of a public records request, yes, that is public knowledge. If people provide that information, that is tracked in the system and people are able to make a records request. In terms of what's being shared with the public, so for example, in the list of complaints that like I'm putting out today after this meeting, we don't include that information.
So you'd have to specifically make a public records request.
Correct. So that is one of the benefits of the AI system is it's just able to help kind of triage it. And if you get that prompt and it says, hey, I think you should call your HOA, the person is still able to override that and say, no, I would like to go forward with communicating this to the town and to the emergency contact because I think the system is wrong. I do need to send this in. So there's no concerns about it getting kind of stuck beyond that. The other benefit is, oh, I apologize. And the second screenshot here, you can see that it's got the option to say, do you know the full street address? And then if the individual selects no, we have more prompting that's able to get them to the right place where they can say, it's in this building, or I think this is the unit number posted on the door. And the system is able to say, okay, it looks like you might be talking about this address. Is this correct? And help people identify that address issue. So that addresses one of the other kind of concerns people were having with being able to get through the hotline that way. Once that complaint is tracked into the system, the responsible agent is able to get a notification in 3 different ways: via SMS messaging, so text messaging, via phone call, and via email. And then that will bring them to this system that shows them all of the details about the complaint. They're able to see, the information about what was described, if there were any images specifically to look at that. And then they're able to issue their response right in this little chat box in the corner. So that gets tracked back into the system, and then it's going to go out to the town staff as well as to the original complainant and saying, all right, we took a look and this is what happened. Because that's the other issue that has been reported is once people submit information to the responsible agent, they're not sure exactly what happened until the following day or the following business day when a town staff member is able to follow up with them and have that conversation. So that can close that loop as well. So this is a little bit of a screenshot of what that might look like for people. At that point, the person who submitted the complaint has a couple options where they're able to either accept the resolution, reply to the agent, or escalate it to the admin, which would be the town staff. So that is also making sure that we're closing the loop fully and making sure that the individual who reported the issue feels like the issue has been addressed. And none of the complaint resolution or citation process is getting managed by this chatbot. This will still need to be managed by town staff on the following business day when they get back into the office. But this just gives people, when it's 2 a.m. and they have a noise complaint, some reassurance that, okay, this is what's happening. So currently, town staff are in the process of updating all of the license records and confirming with owners what the information that they would like to be contacted through. Is it easiest for them if they need to respond within an hour for that to come in via text message, via phone call, or via an email? And then making sure that if it is via text message, then the phone number provided is SMS enabled. So please be on the lookout for this communication from the town. And it's important to respond to this in a timely manner so we can get this updated. And our thought process behind this is managing this complaint resolution process is going to work better for everyone when these issues are being resolved in the moment. I don't think our goal is ever to just, gotcha, you didn't respond to this within an hour. Our goal is to be able to make sure that everyone's issues are being taken care of in a timely manner. And that happens a little bit better for everyone in both sides if we have a communication system that works well. So taking the time to respond to these off-cycle requests from town staff that are kind of outside of your normal licensing process, that's going to be really helpful. There will be some folks who we might have to reach during just that licensing renewal process, and we'll continue to just call them via the phone number for the process. But if you've got a different method of communication that's going to work better for that, it would be very prudent for you to be able to do that so that you can, it works for you. All right, so that is a very quick sneak peek into our new hotline system. In terms of timing of when this is going to be up and running, our hope is that we get it up within the next month and a half. We are having some staff transitions, as I said at the beginning of this meeting. If you joined a little bit later, we are hiring a new town clerk, but I will still be in the office and still be working on this project in the interim, and even as this person gets onboarded. So it's not going to be a complete standstill, but it might just take us a little bit to get it implemented. But we know this is one of the major concerns of community members, and we just want to make sure that everyone had a little bit of a sneak peek, an idea of what was coming. So now we're going to make the rest of this period a listening session as promised. We talked about the guidelines a little bit at the beginning. We're going to ask that one person speak at a time. We'll ask that you raise your virtual or in-person hand. We're going to request that you keep your comments concise. I will have a 3-minute timer shared, and stay on the topic of short-term rentals. And like I said, tonight is a listening session. Primarily, our goal is to get input and ideas about different things, but we might not be able to dive super deeply into every question. And just another note, this conversation is recorded as well. So anything that you say in this meeting will be recorded and shared with town council, as well as shared online on YouTube as well. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing the presentation and we're going to pull up timer. Do we have anyone who would like to provide comments? We'll start with someone in the room.
One of my frustrations, and I mean to go after you, Maddie, because I know you're trying to do the impossible. But when we put some of these new things in place, like parking permits, parking diagram must be submitted, direct number for a responsible agent, and people submit an application that doesn't comply with that, that application still gets approved and they go forward. And so it's very frustrating to say we work to get some of these changes in place, but somebody submits an application and they don't submit a parking permit and they don't have a direct number, and that application still gets accepted and approved. And until somebody like me finds it, nobody knows. That's frustrating because it seems like if the application doesn't meet the requirement, it shouldn't be approved. So that's my comment.
All right, thank you. And then do we have folks either in the room or online, other folks who would like to share? All right, it looks like Michael, you've got your hand up first.
Hi, I just wanted to see if there was anything we can do to kind of start moving more rentals during the summer. It seems like to me, you know, the winter's actually been fantastic, but the summers we are super slow, and it doesn't seem like there's that much going on in Keystone to be driving people to Keystone.
All right, thank you. And folks, as I said, this is primarily a listening session. I know folks have questions, and we can have time maybe at the end to address some of these. So I'm writing them down as we go. But we're just gonna kind of take them in and then go from there. Looks like Patty, you've got your hand up.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I'm interested in the $400,000 that was collected on the illegal 2% lodging tax after the county gave the program to Keystone. We were supposed to not being collecting the 2% lodging tax, but yet everybody still was, and they were collected, and now the county has it in escrow. Do you have any idea of when this is going to be resolved?
All right, thank you, Patty. We're gonna keep taking in comments from folks, and if that includes questions, we'll take note of these questions and go through them in order as time allows. Do we have other folks who would like to comment? It's like Tyson's got a hand up.
Thank you. This is Tyson Horner with Summit Cove Property Management. Just wanted to generalize a comment amongst a lot of our clients that this year we are looking to try to make sure out of the fees that our owner clients on the short-term rental program are paying. They're obviously going to try to provide that safe community and feedback communities when there is an issue that we can resolve that. But they have also been pushing and requesting a little bit more this year from us. And so just a general comment of whatever we can do to help support them on generating additional demand for Keystone and advertising some of kind of those safe practices that we have in place here, I think would be helpful to them. They continually ask us to see if there's anything we can do to help reduce their costs and fees as well. And so if there's any opportunity for us to lower that on the short-term rental permit side, they would appreciate it. But thank you.
Thank you. We have more folks with their hands up. Abby?
Hi, good afternoon. Does Keystone or Summit County have any sort of visit organization? And where does the lodging tax go if it doesn't?
All right, do we have other commenters? Fred?
Hey, good afternoon, and thanks for doing this, and also good luck on the journey, particularly changing over to a new software vendor. One thing I would like to kind of see you strive for is basically replicating a little bit what the county has or what we had used to, and that is just basically a listing on a link that goes to a PDF of all the current short-term rental licenses. It doesn't need to be dynamic. You can post it just as a flat PDF that's updated occasionally. Right now on the Keystone website, when you go to public records, and there is one there for short-term rental records, it goes to nothing. So it'd be nice to have at least just a PDF report, even if it's done monthly, posted on the website of all the current short-term rental license. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other folks with comments? Michelle?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I appreciate a lot of the comments earlier about driving some more demand for Keystone. Very specifically, would like to ask the town council to talk with Vail Resorts about opening up mountain biking 7 days a week, or at least 6 days a week. So right now, the Thursday through Sunday is tough because it drives a lot of people who come for extended periods of time to other places. So just adding to the commentary about trying to help increase demand and increase revenue to the town is specifically around mountain biking would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other folks who would like to make a comment? Abby, it looks like you've still got a hand up. Was that for a comment or just a hand from earlier?
I'm sorry, that must have been a hand from earlier.
Okay, perfect. Anyone else? Otherwise, we can go ahead and get into some of these questions as well. Patty?
Yes, I have another question. It's about the expenses for the short-term rentals in Keystone. I've been asking you for a list of the expenses from day one, and I can never find them in financials. And the county has always given us a list of how they spend the fees. I'd really like to know that information. I think $285 for a fee is way more than we should be paying.
All right. Any other comments? All right, we can go ahead and just start addressing comments kind of in the order, or questions in the order that they came up. So Tim asked about some of the parking diagram requirements, and that is something that is a work in progress as we go back through and review them. One of the things we talked about when we initially made the requirement for those parking diagrams is that it was very possible that when people submitted complaints is when we would go back and look more specifically at each of those submitted parking diagrams and evaluate whether or not those parking diagrams were valid or correct. And so that is how we're handling it at this moment. But that is something that we are striving to continue to get better at catching as we are updating licenses each year. Another question from Michael, and this was kind of a shared community conversation that folks started to have about how to encourage rentals in the summertime. I know this is a topic just generally about how the Keystone community can continue to be an engaging community throughout the summer. I would encourage you to be tapped into some of those town council conversations. If you are only signed up for our short-term rental newsletter, I would encourage you to also sign up for our general town newsletter as well. That way you can get updates about some of the things that town council is talking about and some of the ideas that they've got. For example, at this most recent meeting, I think they talked about having a 4th of July event, for example. They have talked with the resort over the last year about how to increase some of the programming over the summer as well. And so I have heard that be a conversation that town council has been interested in. Yes, Tim.
Also, the master plan is in progress, and I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we're getting close to the end of that process. And certainly one of the things the master plan looks at is how do we generate more activity during the shoulder seasons and the summer. And so that is part of that overall plan.
Yes, thank you, Tim. So that comprehensive plan information is coming out. There's going to be an update about that at the next town council work session. So we would encourage you to do that. Town council meetings are on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. We have a work session typically at 4 p.m. and then a regular meeting at 7 p.m. The meat of kind of conversations and more informal back and forth happens at those work session periods. So we'd encourage you to do that. There's also a business advisory commission and a marketing committee as well. And all of those organizations and groups throughout the town are having these conversations. And it looks like we do have the mayor online right now. So he can definitely speak towards some of the ideas of the council a little bit more directly. Mayor Riley, can you, it looks like you've got your hand up. Would you like to unmute yourself? All right, we'll give him just a moment and he might be able to pop back in. But the other thing that I would note is the town did receive a destination marketing blueprint grant last year from the Colorado Office of Tourism, or I'm not exactly sure on the acronym there, but they have been doing work as well on what it looks like for the town to do some of this marketing as well. And that involved consultant hours, and they've begun doing outreach to local businesses. So these are definitely all conversations that are in the works. Related to that, Michelle, you did ask, or not Michelle, I apologize. I didn't write it down. Does Keystone have a visitor organization though? And where does the lodging tax money go to? So lodging tax, when that was implemented, all taxes do have to go directly to the voters. And when the voters voted on the implementation of the lodging tax, it also tells you what the lodging tax can be used for. So that was for major infrastructure and public safety projects. And then Fred?
Can you hear me now, Maddie?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, let me address a couple of things. First, I've personally been talking with Vail Resorts for the entire time that the town has been established on the issue of mountain biking in the summer. Vail is going to be making a decision in the next month or so on whether they'll go 7 days a week this summer or increase the number of days. It's been a focus of mine because I particularly recognize the impact, particularly on the businesses in River Run of that. Another issue, another thing that's working, and Maddie did mention that we have a marketing committee. Carol Kerr's on this call. She's another council member, and I'll probably ask when I finish. I'll ask her to give you a quick update of the items on that they're working on. But we're just in our infancy in that area. Aside from the 4th of July items that will be worked out in Lakeside Village, we're also because of the destination of grant that we got and the working with the state, there is going to be a drone show also on the 4th of July weekend as well this week. I do want to address very, very briefly Patty's comment on the lodging tax issue. I want to emphasize this is not a town tax, it's a county tax. We found out just before incorporation that the state and the county had worked together and that the tax would be continued to be collected until the 1st of July. The reason for it wasn't illegally collected, it was state law. The state requires that you only can change tax collection 2 times a year, 1st of July, 1st of January. Since the town formed on the 8th of February, the state would not change it. When we found out about it, we did a couple things. We did go to the Department of Revenue and ask them not to do it and got rebuffed. We went to the county and got rebuffed. We went to our state of legislators who represent Summit County, Speaker McCluskey and Senator Roberts, and asked for assistance. They told us there was nothing that they could do. And then we went to the county and asked them to please notify the payers of that tax, since they're the ones who have the records of that it was going to continue, and they chose not to do so. The other piece is that since it is a county tax, we don't have any standing. We did work with the county, and while they would not guarantee the money would come to support the Keystone community, they at least agreed to have a discussion with us on what their intentions are for the funds. They're not in escrow. The funds are in the their overall county lodging tax fund, but they wanted to wait for at least a couple years to ensure that there are no lawsuits that were filed, so the funds didn't get spent on something and then they would not be able to make up the difference. I'll tell you, I'm being honest, I'm not hopeful that those dollars are going to come to Keystone. We got the agreement they would discuss it with us, but they didn't give us a guarantee that it would come to Keystone. The county has a severe financial problem right now, and my guess is that those funds probably will not come to our community, although we will be pushing for them to come to the community, and those discussions will probably be occurring this summer. And lastly, very quickly, if you'd like a quick update on what the marketing committee is doing, Carol, I see you're online. Could you give maybe a minute update?
I'm not sure I can keep to 1 minute.
I know that.
But let me try. So I think the most critical part that's important to know about the small but savvy marketing committee is that they applied for and earned a grant from Colorado Tourism Office for 100 hours of a consultation from experienced destination marketer. So the first step with that was a stakeholder meeting we had in early winter, January or so, to get a sense of what the gaps are in our marketing and what could be happening. And there was a lot of homework that was done. So then it got turned over to this marketing expert. He's going to be working on that strategy over the next few months. Meanwhile, the marketing team is looking at 2 specific things. One, developing a website so that we can identify for visitors why you'd want to come to Keystone. We probably need a standalone website that's a destination focus. That will be a longer term effort, but we want to get something up there short term. The second thing is we're starting to work with businesses to talk about some events in September. So because there are there are several key goals for this marketing effort, and one of them is to educate Keystone writ large about the value of tourism and STRs. I am hoping you would appreciate that. And the second thing is to even out, not to add to the surges, but to bring more visitors during our shoulder periods, making it easier for business people to figure out their manpower, if nothing else. So those are just high level look. You'll hear more about this sooner rather than later, I hope.
One thing I'd like to quickly add is that part of the comprehensive plan that was mentioned there is we are going to be looking at establishing what's called a destination management organization or some adjunct of that, perhaps on the town staff, that would be akin to the visitor or tourism functions that exist in other towns. To make that happen, there's going to be a cost to that. It's going to be we'll have to take something to the voters for a tax increase. Those functions aren't necessarily inexpensive to execute, but that's again why Carol, as she mentioned, talked about making sure the community understands the importance of having that type of organization to market our community and to be able to build up those shoulder seasons and build up the summer months.
And one last aside, when we go to the voters, we would want to be able to explain that this is what we would get for any kind of tax increase. And so that's why we need to have a good strategy, a good plan to present. That will take a little more time.
Yep.
All right, wonderful. Thank you to both for chiming in and filling in some of that context. I'm always happy to speak about the staff side, but the council can address their intentions most clearly. The only one other comment that we didn't hit on, Fred, you noted about the PDF of licenses. We can work on what a less dynamic way to look at that is, but I did just want to share with folks while you're on this meeting what the easiest way to see a list of active licenses is. So this is I'm gonna stop sharing for just a moment so that I don't accidentally share anything that's not public. All right, so this is what our licensing homepage looks like for folks that are members of the public. When you get to the short-term rental section, you can go ahead and hit search. If you're looking for a specific address or unit or owner, you can type that in, but you're also able to just hit the search button and that will show you a listing of all of the active licenses. The caveat being you can select all now and it should be able to give you the CSV. If you just hit the CSV button to download it, if you're wanting to download it for some reason, it's only going to download these 10 rows. So you'll want to hit this select all and then hit that CSV button. But that is just a quick overview of how to access that, but we can look at if there is a less dynamic way to share this. That's just a quick PDF. All right, I think that covers all of the primary questions that we've received today. Were there any other comments that folks wanted to share with us? Stephanie?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. You mentioned that the hotline can filter out or recommend that certain things be addressed with the HOA. I'm curious what type of issues, if you've got an HOA with short-term rental restrictions, how the hotline, addresses what should be routed to the HOA versus what the hotline addresses.
So The way that we do this primarily is filtering it to specifically understand what the regulations are in the town's ordinance. So it reviews each of the things that are outlined by the ordinances of the town. And if it identifies that, hey, this issue seems like a restriction that's not outlined in the town of Keystone ordinances, maybe this is something done by your HOA. That would be a prompting that the system might give it. But again, just in case that information is incorrect or it's not filtering it exactly right, people are still able to go ahead and submit that to us. And then we're able to have that staff intervention to determine that. Tim.
Just as an example, Stephanie, we have a guideline that people can't use their hot tubs after a certain hour. So if that would be the complaint, that's not really an STR violation, that's an HOA violation. And that is something that would be fall into that category.
Thank you. Any other comments before we go? Otherwise, thank you folks for being here today. Like I said, we're going to send out an email with all of the information that we covered tonight, as well as with those complaints specifically, in case people were interested in looking at what that looks like. Those are from this season, along with the resolutions. And then just some general updates will go out to folks about what to expect in the coming months and any changes that might happen with staff, for example. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you at our next session. We haven't scheduled the exact date yet. I think we're waiting till we get the new person hired on, but be on the lookout for those communications. And we are always happy to hear from you in the interim. You can reach us at clerk@keystoneco.gov. Thank you.
Thank you.